Hello. In the Crown of Aragon 639 years ago, it was June 19th, 1387. My name is Jonathan Seyfried. I'm a PhD candidate in history at the University of New Mexico, and this is the Historian's Notebook, a podcast about how history gets made. Season 1 is titled Multcara Companiona. We're looking at a document from each day of the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violant de Bar. Let's begin today's document. We've been with Joan for the last few episodes, and today we're going to switch over to Violant. This is from Register 2037. It's a Sigilli Secreti register, and we have a very clear addressee. We also have a very clear probata. We have the lovely, refined script of Bartolomeo Sirvent as the scribe. Today's document, it's a really good example of why I really enjoy reading the script produced by Bartolomeo Sirvent. I think he's my favorite scribe of them all. Just seems to have a very consistent, nice, thick letter. He likes to use a lot of ink, does not skimp on it. And I just really enjoy whenever I have a document by him. Doesn't necessarily mean I can always unpack the paleography, but I think he's one of the most clear scribes around this time. The document for today is actually the second document on folio 30R, so we're looking at the bottom half of the page. The addressee line is very clear. It starts with Dirigitur, and then Garcia Lopez de Sesse, and then the title Militi Consulario e Mayordomo Domini Regis. So a knight of the council and a majordomo, of the house, master of the house of the Lord King. And then we have in the second half of the second line of that addressee line, Ac Bailiff Generali Regni Aragon. And Aragon is on the last line there. So the Bailiff General of the Kingdom of Aragon. And then that matches with what we see at the beginning of the text block. So right underneath La Reina, we have Bailiff General. And, one other thing to say about the probata, we've got a really standard probata, Domina Regina Mandawet Mihi, Bartolomeo Sirvent. The lady queen commanded me. All right, so this is something that I think is pretty clearly a document that Violant has had a hand in, but she's not signing it. The last word of the main text block looks to me like secretarios. So maybe it's Bartolomeo Sirvent who has signed it. The text of the document is one that I think I understand generally, but I am getting mixed up in who is being given what. I'm pretty sure that the person mentioned in line 2, Sancho Bohil, is receiving properties. But then he's identified as a porter nostra, and that makes me think that he might be carrying the documents. But I mean, both could be true. He could be carrying the documents and also be receiving the concessions. I will say that the AI usage for this document was pretty helpful on a number of fronts. But I will also say that Gemini really messed up the place names. So at the end of line 2, we've got Exia, Exea, and then in the middle of line 3, we've got Vila de Sos. So Gemini transformed that Exia into, I think, something else. I don't even remember, but it was not the right place name. And then when it got to line 3, it just skipped over the de Sos. So it didn't even attempt to make anything there. It said, de Vila, and then just went right into the next words after de Sos, de les cuales coses. So Gemini was not helpful. Now, let's continue talking about Claude and how Anthropic has made some kind of tweak to how Claude operates, because I am just blowing out my usage limit now, like every single time. So for a shorter document like this, it used to be no problem at all to do all 3 stages for my project process that I had set up with Claude. And today it was a shorter document. It was in Catalan and not Latin. And I changed the effort setting down from high to medium, and I kept it on Opus 4.6. All right, so that's 2 levels down from the most advanced model available, which is Opus 4.8. So I thought that I would get further today than I had in previous attempts in this week, and I did get further, but I couldn't get it to complete stage 2. It did complete stage 1, and so when you look at the PDF of my chat with Claude for today's document, you'll see that there's 20 pages of self-talk before it gets to the 5-page response to the prompt. So something has happened where Anthropic has changed some internal settings so that what I'm asking Claude to do generates maybe way more work. And I would say it did come up with a better stage 1 transcription than what I would have gotten the first week of June, but it just blew through my usage. And in certain instances, Claude is really doing way more work than a human would do with a bit of experience. Because, for example, Claude really just hammered into the dating clause. So, the second to the last line in the middle starts with data en Barcelona, sots nostra segal secret. This is like really standard language. It is, you find this language in almost, every single Catalan document in this register, and yet Claude couldn't pattern match successfully and let itself just say that this is a well-worn phrase that we see all the time, including in the stuff that, it's looked at within my project. And instead it had to kind of bang its head against the wall for a good long while with the Segel Secret especially. So it's not taking advantage of pattern matching as much as it could, and it's spinning its wheels and using tokens unnecessarily. And I don't know, what Anthropic did, but I didn't change any of the instructions in the project. I'm doing the same kind of prompt, the same kind of image that I had done in the first week of June, and it's just blowing out tokens now and going through the usage, in my opinion, unnecessarily. So, something I'm going to do later, because I can't use it without upgrading right now, is I'm going to ask Claude to tell me why it is now going so effortfully into this, whereas in the first week of June it was not. So I'm going to hopefully get some answers, and I'll tell you in the next recording. Or maybe, I think I won't tell you in the next recording. I'll just write it on the episode page for today's episode. But it really is annoying, because it's like, you should be able, in theory, to just kind of keep doing what you've been doing, as opposed to Anthropic on their side kind of raising this effort level and not telling you. So, yeah, I guess such is the reality of technological advancement, um, with this product, which is just these constant updates. And in the end, we're going to be able to do things like, okay, so let's look to the future for a moment here. What Claude did, which was a nice thing, so I've just been complaining about Anthropic, but I will say that what Claude did, which was super nice, was it flagged line 6. Oh, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, it's in the text block, it's line 5. So in the middle of that line, well, actually, let's start from the slash. So, perché com lo signore e nos haya acor e vulam moguts per los. Okay. So, Claude on its own flagged this as significant for my focus on the question of to what extent Joan and Violant were doing a co-rulership. Because what this sentence translates to in English is because as, or sort of for the reason that, the Lord King and I, kind of plural I, have an accord, and we wish that you move, and then basically the possession of the stuff or whatever, it doesn't really matter what comes next. What the significance is here is that Violant is saying that she and Joan are acting in accord, and then she's going to give a command that is the result of the agreement that she and the king have reached. And the way this letter begins is after the addressee, Bailiff General, the letter begins, Lo signore per sa letra patent. So there's an action that has been done by Joan to create a patent, a letter patent, that has already been sent to the Bailiff General regarding this issue. So this is like some real cooperation going on with this administrative action here of the transfer of the possession of certain properties in these two towns. Oh, which I totally forgot to mention what they are, because I figured it out on my own. Yay. And then Claude, when it loaded its response, it had also figured it out. So these two towns are Ejea and Sos, which are actually known by longer names today. Ejea de los Caballeros and Sos de lo... Uh-oh, now I'm forgetting what it is. Hold on. It's Ejea de los Caballeros and Sos del Rey Católico. So, I tried to isolate out Ejea and also Sos to get translations of those words, and I really struggled. Talk about like the disadvantage of, not being a native speaker of Catalan or from this region. I think if I could just go to these towns and ask, hey, what does the name of your town mean? Like, how would you translate into the English? It would come back as something that makes sense. But, being a non-native speaker of this and learning it and just trying to type in those words into the dictionary, it doesn't work. It doesn't come back with something sensible. So I struggled with really trying to get a good English translation of the names of these towns. But anyway, Claude had identified them successfully, so that's another point in Claude's favor. But okay, I digressed a little bit there on the name of the towns, but let's get back to this overall point about how Joan and Violant are working together quite literally in accord in regards to whatever kind of transfer of possessions is going to be happening with Sancho Bohil. So, this is a document that clearly shows a level of cooperation, but I think there's a question about whether this is like literally Joan and Violant like talking to each other about it, or whether this is their counselors, that their counselors have recognized that there's some kind of co-jurisdiction going on and it overlaps in the portfolios of Joan and Violant, and so it's necessary to coordinate, and it would be like that in any king and queen of the Crown of Aragon. So there would have been a necessary level of cooperation because of the jurisdictional boundaries, as opposed to something special going on with Joan and Violant. That's the question. And so I don't have a good answer for that right now. And what I would say is that, let's just look at this again, like 2 years from now, when we can do full text searching of these documents. And what we would do is we would search for the phrase lo signore e nos, or we could search for the word accord or accord and see what kinds of situations come up. So the question that I have is unanswerable right now because we can't do full text searching, and also because I don't have 20 years of experience looking at these documents, and I just don't have a kind of bulk reservoir of stock phrases and information and examples in my head. So I have a feeling that someone like the current expert on Violant, Claire Ponsic, who's a French historian, she would be able to answer this question right away because she's just worked with these documents so much more. So that's the state of the AI right now and the hope for the AI in the future, and also the state of my own competence in regards to my research question and what I'm seeing here in this document. It leaves a lot to be desired. But you know what? You know what's coming. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Historian's Notebook, Season 1, Molt Cara Compagnona. If you are leaving with more questions than you arrived with, I've done my job, because remember, here it is, the motto of The Historian's Notebook is dissatisfaction guaranteed. Visit the website to see an image of today's document and additional show notes, and listen again tomorrow to hear about the next day in the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violante de Bar. In the meantime, take care.